Hi, I'm Melissa Bill, and welcome to the Business Roundup, where we catch up with the movers and shakers in the business world. Today, joining me is Tara Chapman. She's the president and CEO of the Greater Haralson Chamber. Thank you for joining me today.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity. I'm excited.
So I know business, depending on who you talk to, small businesses seem to be getting a little bit of a break across the country. I don't know if that's going to fuel growth. And I know rural areas, it's sometimes difficult, because you have a lot of different obstacles in the way. Now, can you tell us a little bit about your background and the area that you live in?
Absolutely. So I'm in Haralson County, Georgia, and I think our total population is about 30,000. We have 4 cities within the county, with Bremen, Georgia, being the largest city of the 4. But Cannon, Georgia, is our county seat, and so I have been in this, in some capacity of chamber economic development work for about. I think I'm working on my 23rd year. So working on my 23rd year. So, been doing this for a minute, was not on my path, but the doors just kind of opened up. I actually have an accounting degree. I graduated from our local university, University of West Georgia. But when I graduated, my boss at the time decided, we want you to stay. So they made me a pretty decent offer. And so I've been here ever since, and have just kind of grown in different roles. Prior to that, I really didn't know what a chamber did. I really didn't know what economic development was. And so it's been fun to kind of take that and actually try to instill that in the kids, in the upcoming generation. I want them to know there are future entrepreneurs, there are future small business owners, and I want to make sure that they understand the chamber and what, that it works hard for the businesses in our area. And then I also get the fun job of kind of recruiting a new industry and business to the area as well. So do a little bit of everything, and grew up here. So born and raised, and there's just something different about doing this work in the community that you were raised and that you live in. I feel like there's always a little more passion, because it just feels more than a job. It almost feels like a mission to see my community grow. So I just feel super blessed to be here. Even with all the challenges, I still feel super blessed to be able to do this.
And now, can you discuss, what are some of the projects that you're doing? I know there's one called Grow Haralson, and you're also unifying the chamber and different development efforts. What type of things are you working on now?
So, right now I think one of the newest things is we were selected as one of the communities for Propel, which is a program through the Carl Vinson Institute at the University of Georgia. And it's us and 2 other communities. And so they're actually working with us right now to do an economic development action plan. And so they said they like to call it that because strategic plans sit on a shelf, and an action plan means you're going to move forward. So some of the things that we're looking at as we move through that is obviously housing. I don't think any community can do anything without discussing housing and the availability to all demographics, not just specific. Where are our kids going to live when they grow up and they decide to move back? If we want to attract a younger workforce, got to have somewhere for them to live. They've got to be able to afford it. So we're looking at that and quality of life. We need more things for our kids to do. For family, more family-friendly things. And what does that look like? We're even looking at childcare. What does that look like? Is that a barrier to the workforce? Is that a barrier to employment? I know as a mom, that has always been the biggest stress I think I've probably had with my children prior to getting in school, was who's gonna watch them while I'm at work. But also, as they got older, who's going to pick them up from school? Where do they go? And so we're kind of looking at that, and also transportation, because we have many folks that need, they have one car, single car family, and if dad's at work, and so there's just a lot of exciting things going on, and we're finding communities in the state that are doing something similar, and learning from them, and so that's a lot of what I'm working on right now, and then always. The recruitment of industry, more jobs, more investment to our community. And a fun story about our community is about 3 years ago, we had a landfill looking to locate in this area. And this was something the community felt very strongly against. And you had a group of community leaders just come together, citizens, they came together, they raised the funds, and they fought this landfill. And we actually ended up, the county commissioners were sued, And so it had to go to court due to some zoning things. And we won in court. So the county won in court. And so that landfill was not allowed to locate. Well, to celebrate even better, the county commission chair at the time, Ronnie Ridley, he said, you know what, we're going to buy this site. And so we have a 1,675 acre site in Tallapoosa, Georgia, with interstate frontage that we have now been kind of tasked with developing into a future economic development site. It has rail on one end, and rail sites are very hard to find in the state of Georgia right now. So we're at a little bit of an advantage there. And then the south side has interstate frontage. So I've also been tasked with developing that park and figuring out the best fit for our community for jobs and growth out that way. So
That's
that's a
amazing.
little bit got going on.
That is amazing because I think I was saying, I come from a smaller rural community, and lime rock mines were like the biggest, people just didn't want them in their back. There was so many of them. And it was cutting into like the wildlife, that was supposed to be preserves and stuff. And they were challenging it. And because it was in the backyard of people's, like they had this beautiful housing community. And then they want to put the lime rock mine like right next to it. And you can hear the
Right.
blasting and stuff. That doesn't, it just, like you're saying, it just cuts down on the quality of your, life and stuff in the community.
Yes. So it was it's a great story, and I can't wait to finish the story and say, and at the end of it, this is what we have, and we've created these jobs and this investment, and so I think it's a true little Cinderella story, and I can't wait to kind of watch it unfold. And super thankful, to be a part of it, but to also have had a leader that had the vision for, hey, you know what? We're gonna go grab this up so we don't have this problem again, and let's see what we can do with it. It has its challenges, site cost and those sorts of things, but we'll figure it out. And there's somebody out there that needs it, and so hopefully it just turns out into has a beautiful ending. So that's my hope.
Right, for the community, definitely. And now, what are some of the other ways you're strengthening business community in your area, in the smaller, and then I guess the difficulties and the ways that you're overcoming?
Yes, absolutely. I think, probably the biggest difficulties that we've kind of dealt with right now are within our downtowns. So when you have an interstate that runs through your community, the bigger box, they cluster at the interstate, obviously. And so it grabs our attention. We get all, we all travel, we get off the interstate, we do, grab food, whatever, and then we hop back on. And so a lot of people forget about those downtowns. And so that has been kind of a struggle here as our downtown businesses and getting the foot traffic that it needs. So another kind of struggle has been business or buildings in our downtowns owned either by locals or by people that don't even live here, and they aren't keeping them up. They aren't maintaining them. And so you've got roofs collapsing in, you've got, a lot of blight. And so how do we find a happy medium there? Because we have people wanting to go into buildings and down in the downtowns, but they can't either find the owner, or the owner doesn't want to sell, but the owners are also not maintaining their buildings. And so we've had a lot of discussion around that. But also, what can we do in the downtowns to bring more people? And we really just lean on our small businesses to tell us, what do you need? We really pride ourselves here at the Chamber as a service organization. I'm here to service my businesses. So we have a quarterly retail roundtable. We just bring our retailers together and talk about, what's going on and how can we help. And I think the biggest right now is to really showing people the importance of shopping local and what that means for a community. Amazon's not supporting your local ball team. They're not supporting your festivals. They're not doing those things. And while we all shop Amazon, and no knock at them, when, the first thing we do when we're fundraising is we go to these small businesses, but are we showing them the same support, as what we expect them to do in our schools and in our community? And so it's really just identifying those issues. But the biggest, I would say, are the buildings. And then also, I believe there's an opportunity for us to look at some zoning restrictions so that certain businesses can locate in a downtown where they build off of each other. So if I'm a retailer, and we have this situation, I'm a retailer and I have a church beside me in a downtown building, and no knock at a church at all, but that's not drawing customers. We can't work together. We can't build off that and build that downtown presence. So I think, we're going to have to take a look at conditional uses and, hey, this specific area, we want the following businesses are allowed to locate here, and just kind of really look at the clusters and how do we, how do we fix that? So definitely have our set of challenges when it comes to that, um, and making the community understand the importance again of that local and how those tax dollars staying local, what that looks like and what that means for the future of our communities.
So it sounds like you have a lot of not just, chamber, business, but zoning and planning and infrastructure. There's a lot of different things that you're looking at.
Mm. Lots of moving parts, always.
Absolutely. And now leadership strategy, especially for women executives, like what are your feelings on that? Like ways that we can foster more of that?
Absolutely. So, one of the things that we started last April is a Women Observing Women luncheon that we do in April. And that was really just to bring business professionals together. You don't have to be a business owner, you can work in a business, but bringing them together and just mentoring each other and talking about the struggles. Um, and, it is not a I'm woman, hear me roar type of event. It's really more of an encouragement because we face struggles probably that maybe men don't, especially when you get into maternity leave and you get into being a mom, but trying to balance the workload. And, I'm just of the opinion that if I can talk to somebody and they can share with me their experience, it gives me hope that, I'm on the right path, or, hey, we've all had these challenges. Or if I look at a successful businesswoman and I think, man, she just must have just had everything handed to her, and I learn of the struggles it took to get her there, doesn't that make me, it motivates me to continue on. And so that was really the purpose of that. And so it has grown. And so now we're looking in October, we're hosting our first kind of Women Observing Women evening event of empowerment, and also recognizing women in the community and what they've done to foster growth, but, not just from an economic development side, but from a social side. And, there are a lot of women out here doing a lot of great things, and it just, if you're not in some sort of executive role, sometimes you get passed over. And so we just want to build off of that and encourage each other and kind of build that strength among the women, moving forward, in hopes that they meet somebody that has been through something that they're going through, and, it empowers them to go and be better.
That's amazing. And even for the younger women coming up, that are getting out of high school or college or whatever, they kind of can look to people who are like mentors.
Yes.
And now on the front of like tourism for the community, what are some of the things you're doing like as far as branding to get economic growth?
Yes, so tourism it's a tricky one for us right now. And so the city of Bremen just finished the hub, which has been a nice attraction. They took an old clothing manufacturing building, and I believe it was donated to the city, and so they demolished it and created an amphitheater type environment. And then with the music history that we have, with Harold Shedd being from Bremen, and he's had such an influence in the music industry. And so there will be a Harold Shedd museum going up in Bremen as well. So I think things are starting to tie together. So I think as we see more of those things start to develop and we see more tourism income come in, because really right now there's not a lot of hotel motel tax dollars to be used for tourism. I believe, that then we can kind of rally the troops and set a plan for what tourism looks like in our community. What do we have to offer? The funniest thing, it's really not funny, but just something you wouldn't think of. We have the Tallapoosa River, and so we have this little we call it paddle the Poosa, because so many kayakers will come, and we have launch pads throughout the community, and they will come and they will kind of kayak down or float paddle the Poosa. So that is something that we are trying to build off of. One of the issues was nobody was owning that, and so I believe Keep Haralson Beautiful has decided to own Paddle the Poosa in terms of making sure it stays cleaned up and those sorts of things. But we did use tourism money to develop launch pads. So there are 4 launch sites in Haralson County where they can go, and we also have a kayak rental kind of on the path as well. So that's kind of brought probably the most tourism at the moment. So our hope is that we just continue to grow with having the interstate and having Highway 27 4-lane, that will continue to grow and attract more tourism related industry so that we can then go out and um, market our tourism a little better. So definitely work to be done there, but I think we're on the right path.
Right, exactly. Expanding on that. And now for how do public-private partnerships kind of help you drive business expansion right now?
Well, I think, we were talking before we got started on small communities, and our biggest barrier is lack of funding. And what that means is that you have infrastructure improvements and these things that you need to be able to do, but when you don't have the budget for it, it's kind of a catch-22. We wanna grow, but in order to get them to attract them here, we've gotta have some things together. And so we've actually, had experience with some public-private partnerships where private developers will come in and they will purchase a site, and they will come to me and say, these are my plans for it, and I'll just kinda go out and help them market it. So I'll go to the state of Georgia and say, "We have these sites, and they would be great, for future economic development." So we are seeing a lot of that right now, a lot of developer interest in Haralson County, which tells me, that they see potential. They see the growth potential coming, and so we wanna make sure that we're working well with them. We had a business park in Buchanan for about 20 years, and it was a public-private partnership, where a group of investors came in, but they kept it in the name of the development authority, and, it took us 20 years, but we have finally, sold that site. It works, in some capacities, and I think it's important for smaller communities who are gonna see the growth to have some of that public-private partnership in place so that we can develop sites for future growth.
Now, as you move, further into the future, what are some of your goals, as you look ahead to try to accomplish?
First and foremost would probably be, from an economic development perspective, is to fill that 1,675 acres. What are our next steps? We've done some conceptuals and some master planning, but, let's go beyond that and let's start looking at ways, are there grant funds where we can develop the road or do some, wetland studies or whatever it may be. So that is definitely on the radar, but also identifying other sites within the community for potential growth and beginning to work with the cities and the county to figure out, what's our next step. And then from a chamber side is just continue to be that voice for our business, continue to be, the sounding board to them, but also the service that they need. So a lot of small businesses can't afford things on their own, but if we band together and we can offer, those services to them at a discounted rate to help them grow and expand, and then that's what we want to continue to do. And then just make sure that the growth that is coming, we are prepared for, but we are also, not overdoing it and not just letting anything come in. Who do we want to be when we grow up? Let's make sure that we know what that is and we kind of control where that goes. As we see such a boom in business right now and interested parties wanting to locate here. And so, I think we're on a great path, and I think the plan is to just stay on this path and keep working, even when we hit the roadblocks, even when we want to beat our head against a brick wall. Just keep moving and remember what we're doing it for. It's not about me. It's not about, the others in the office. It's about our businesses being successful. It's about us growing the community, because as we grow the community, that's more feet in the door of our small businesses. And so we want to make sure that we're doing our part. To serve our community. Like I said, this is a community I love. I'm here. I have a junior and a sophomore in high school. What's next for them? They're my future. What am I doing to prepare to get this community successful and prosperous for our future generations? And that's just really our goal and our mission, and we just try to stay focused on that. even through all the hurdles. We just, and I think any chamber you meet, that's what they're trying to do is just keep their communities moving forward in a positive way.
Yeah, definitely. And now, if people wanted more information on the area or the chamber, what would be the best way to find it?
The best way would be haralson.org, haralson.org. And then we also have a pretty active social media presence on Facebook, specifically Greater Haralson Chamber of Commerce. And then we also have an Instagram account with the same. And we utilize Instagram a lot to share stories from our small businesses. So, if they've got something fun going on, then we'll make sure we throw that out there for the audience to see.
No, I love that. Well, I really appreciate you joining us today and talking about the important work that you're doing.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it very much.
But hopefully, maybe we can have you back later down the road and just see where things are going.
I would love that. I would love hopefully have a couple success stories to share.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you for joining the Business Roundup, where we always try to bring you interviews with some of the leading people in business, whether it be technology, finance, or energy. I hope you tune in. I hope you subscribe and listen, and we'll give you updates for new interviews that are coming up. Until next time, I'm Melissa Bell.